second portion of our talk today, and I'm very happy to introduce Robin McConnell. I think Robin and I have worked, I've been here about 13 years, and you've been here at least.
At least that.
Yeah.
I've been here 24 years.
Robin McConnell is our oncology dietitian. She brings more than 25 years of nutritional care experience and working in a number of medical institutions in the New York, New Jersey area. Robin manages nutritional care in the Division of Thoracic, Head, Neck, and Urologic Oncology. She leads the nutritional program here at John Theurer Cancer Center and is the leader in our cooking studio where we have demonstrations every Friday, and we're very thankful to her teaching us eating healthy. So thank you, Robin, for today's talk.
Thank you for allowing me to come. And I have to say, this is our cooking studio. You might have seen that was the staging area for the caterers. And our kitchen usually looks a little neater than it does right now. But we don't put nearly this kind of spread. Somebody was like sweet enough to ask me, are you the dietitian that planned the menu for this thing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, dietitians would never plan stuff like that. You would get fruits, you'd get vegetables, you'd get a whole bunch of whole grain stuff. But the food is absolutely fabulous, and I think they did an amazing job. So, as I say, this is our cooking studio. I'm one of 6 dietitians here at the Cancer Center, and while I always complain that we could always use more dietitians, I realize as I look around at other cancer centers that we're very, very well staffed. Our cooking studio was a gift, I have to say. We've been running programs there for the last 2 years since we've been in this building. Have you ever heard the words cooking studio and cancer center in the same sentence? I never have. So it's a thrill to be running these programs. And don't let the photo fool you. It looks like we're working, but we're really having fun. Okay, so a couple of things. How many of you are going to school still? Living at school? Okay, how many of you are responsible for meal prep for yourself? Okay, a good bunch, okay. How many are responsible for meal prep for others? Children, parents? Okay, how many of you think that you eat a pretty healthy diet? Oh, okay, well maybe there's something we can do here. In my work here as a nutritionist at the Cancer Center, the questions I get most often are, is there anything I can do to reduce the chance that my cancer will come back? That's always the first question. What are the best foods for me? Is there anything that I can do to help me not develop some other kind of cancer? And for many years, the answer to questions 2 and 3 were pretty easy. The Department of Health and Human Services and the USDA published the first dietary guidelines way back in 1980. They simplify and summarize a whole host of information that looking at the role of diet and exercise in health promotion and disease prevention. And then recently in 2011, to address the growing childhood and adult obesity problem, the 2011 edition places a lot greater emphasis on reducing calories as well as increasing physical activity. And then the Cancer Society also puts out guidelines for nutrition and physical activity for cancer survivors. The last one came out in the last year in the journal CA, a Cancer Journal for Clinicians. And I would encourage you, it's about 33 pages, and I don't know how many references there are, 321. And if you had to read those 321 and synthesize it all down into something that you could do every day to improve your health and reduce the chance of your cancer coming back, you wouldn't be able to do it. But thankfully, we have organizations that will do it, and that's part of what I'm presenting today. All right, this sounds a little boring, right? Not so fast. Let's get back to those 3 questions. Questions 2 and 3 have been around for a long time. We know that for people who don't smoke, the most important way to reduce your risk of cancer is to achieve a healthy weight, be physically active, to eat a diet made up mostly of fruits, vegetables, and whole grain breads and cereals, and to watch the amount of alcohol you drink. That's really a buzzword for decreasing it. It's really hard to say these kind of things to a group of young people. A recent study published by the American Cancer Society showed that non-smokers who most closely followed these guidelines have a significantly lower risk of premature death from all causes, including cancer, than people who follow these guidelines least closely. But what about the first question? What can I do to prevent my cancer from coming back? Well, that wasn't always so clear. I remember when I first worked at Sloan Kettering, we used to have to hand out these brochures for how to prevent cancer. And to me, it always seemed so cruel because here I had a hospital full of people who already had cancer. And it's interesting how, 20 some odd years later, how the research has finally caught up, and that we know that following those same guidelines can actually reduce the risk of that same cancer coming back and increase disease-free survival. And I think that's huge because, let's face it, nobody gets cancer by choice, but it's empowering to know that there is something that you can do to improve what happens for the rest of your future. Okay, so I have a 10-step program here. It's kind of gimmick-free on how you can help to reduce the risk of future cancers, but also to improve your health in general. All right, I promise it gets more exciting from here. But the Choose My Plate, it always starts at the plate. When you're eating outside, the choices that you put on your plate are really, really important. This is really not indicative of every single meal that you eat, but you kind of have to look at it as, a little more globally as to what you eat every day, over the course of a whole day. So your low calorie, high fiber, nutrient dense fruits, vegetables should be about 50% of all the calories that you eat. 100% whole grains should comprise about a quarter of that, with lean protein sources kind of making up the balance. And then dairy over there in the corner reminds us that we need calcium, and very good sources that would be low-fat milk, yogurts, and calcium fortified soy products. All right, BMI. We've all seen these charts. Body mass index is a number that's calculated very, very simply from a person's height and weight. And it's a pretty good, reliable indicator of body fatness for most people. And it's used as a screening tool, essentially, to see what people may be at greater risk for developing health problems. But it's not diagnostic in and of itself because, let's face it, health takes a lot of other things into consideration. What you eat, your activity level, what other lifestyle habits you might have, like smoking, etc., genetics. It kind of gives you an idea. Although BMI is used for men and women of all ages, basically over the age of 20. At the same BMI, women, of course, will have more fat than men. Older people will have more fat than younger people. Asians tend to, and especially South Asians, tend to have more body fat than Caucasians, and blacks will have more muscle mass than Caucasians. And of course, when you look at athletes, very highly trained athletes, they may have a high BMI, but they're certainly not overweight from excess body fat. Okay, how do you fit in? This chart, as you can see, a normal BMI is considered anywhere from like 19 to 24. Once you hit 25, then you go into the overweight category, and then in 30 and above, you're in the obese category. And these numbers stand for men and women. So a 5'3" woman and a 5'3" man at these same heights and at these same weights would fall in the same category. So why do we care about BMI? In general, people at a higher BMI are at more risk for heart disease, higher risk for hypertension, type 2 diabetes, stroke, sleep apnea. But what does this mean for cancer survivors? It's actually interesting how this research has developed. Being overweight or obese definitely increases the risk of recurrence. And this is a relatively new finding. This was looked at in the Journal of Clinical Oncology. Being overweight or obese reduces the likelihood of disease-free survival and overall survival in particularly breast cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate, and gynecologic cancers. And we here at the Cancer Center actually take this pretty seriously. We started a program. Every patient in our breast and our GYN divisions who have a BMI over 30 are referred to the dietitian. And they can either meet with the dietitian one-on-one, or we have classes that they can go to. So we, look at some of these risk factors in a very, very positive way, because let's face it, this is something that you can change. And I think that that's empowering when you have the information and know that you can make those changes to positively affect your health and positively affect your future. I think that that's very empowering. And we get great response from our women. Okay, does breakfast really matter? Well, research tells us that it does. Research says that people who eat breakfast are more likely to maintain a healthy weight. Choosing the right foods assists your body so you have better focus during the day, or especially in those early hours and going into the early afternoon, memory and concentration. And skipping breakfast can certainly affect your energy level. But you really have to avoid that donut and muffin trap every day, because you could so easily rack up 400, 500, 600, 700 calories. You know how big those muffins are in those delis. And you simply can't eat a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich every day. But what can you eat? So here's some power breakfast ideas. You want to make sure that you're always including a protein source. Protein's going to last longer. I used to always eat oatmeal in the morning, and for some reason I found at 11 o'clock I was starving. And I mean, oatmeal is a fabulous breakfast, but for me it just didn't seem to work. So you see that there's a breakfast smoothie. If you have plain fat-free yogurt, you mix a cup of frozen berries into it, you put some flaxseed or some wheat germ in it, a little bit of juice to thin it out. It's a power breakfast. Some yogurt with granola and fruit. Again, these Greek yogurts have a lot more protein than other types of yogurt, and there is just like a sustainability in the body that works really, really well. This is my new favorite breakfast, is peanut butter on whole grain toast with a slice of, or half a slice of banana on it. Lox, an ounce of lox. This is like the cheapest breakfast ever. 225, 250 calories. 2 Wassa crackers, some low-fat cream cheese, and an ounce of lox. It's flavorful, it's great for protein. A high-fiber cereal like a kashi goleen, they tend to have more protein in them because they're a little more fortified with soy. And then some whole grain bread, a hard-boiled egg, and a half a grapefruit. These are all really, really easy things. You don't have to get up early really to do them. Probably the most difficult thing there is the breakfast smoothie because it involves a blender. Okay, exercise. And this, again, is like, there's nothing else that you take home with you today. If you think about the BMI, go online, find a BMI chart, see where you fall. And exercise. These are the 2 biggest things in terms of cancer survival in the literature these days. The new guidelines from the American Cancer Society and from the American College of Sports Medicine encourages survivors to exercise, aim to exercise 150 minutes a week. Okay, so that's 3 50-minute sessions. It doesn't seem so overwhelming when you break it down. The problem is that when you get older, okay, when you get to 60, those numbers actually really go up because the metabolism changes and it's much, much more difficult to maintain and lose weight without ramping up the exercise piece. But they also encourage that you include some strength or exercise training because that weight-bearing exercise, especially for women, is really important because we tend to lose a lot more bone density than men. And also for people who have maybe been on long-term steroid use, you tend to have a lot of bone loss too. So you want to make sure that you're doing those weight-bearing exercises. And basically, if you really didn't exercise before, the goal is to try and become a little bit more active. Many studies show that being physically active during treatment can have a positive impact on the quality of life. And I spend a lot of time at the chair side talking to patients about just little things that they can do in order to improve just strength and conditioning. If you think about getting up and down from a chair, in these exercise, these muscles that you exercise in your thighs, you can do it very, very safely because you have a chair there. Sitting down on the couch, if you pick up a water bottle, this is probably about a pound, and just doing exercises that way. Because you tend to lose a lot of muscle mass when you're not using your muscles. So, I have some examples here of some moderate exercise, some vigorous exercise. And if you don't think that you have time to exercise, I think everybody can kind of figure it out. My best advice to you is to make it convenient and make it fun. I work in this building, and I park 2 buildings down. The building in between is the Hillcrest building, and the fitness center is right there. So for me not to be able to take the staircase up to the gym up there that they have for employees would really take a lot of effort. So when I was approaching my 40th birthday, I said to myself, I am not going to be 40 and unfit. And I made a commitment to to do some exercise during the week. Okay, in the battle with the munchies, do you sometimes feel like you're destined to lose? Americans spent more than $32 billion on packaged snack foods last year. 76% of us are impulse eaters, essentially munching on whatever is there. Sometimes it's just out of habit. Sometimes we just feel that urge to eat. Some of us are emotional eaters. You always know the stress eaters and the stress non-eaters. But with a little bit of forethought, you can actually shape the quality of those snacks to include some valuable nutrients and satisfy those cravings all at the same time. But the key here, again, is you want to limit the snacks. You don't want the snacks to take over. And if you limit the calories to about 150 calories a week, at a snack, you're not going to go over. Okay, so some good snack ideas. I love wasa bread. I just think they're like perfect. But a slice of wasa bread has 45 calories. If you put some hummus on there or some baba ganoush, it's a good crunchy, flavorful snack. Brown rice cakes with some Laughing Cow cheese. Fruit makes a good snack. If you look at those little Skinny Cow frozen treats, they're lower in calories. And those 100-calorie packs, they don't all have to be cookies. But, they really do go a long way in controlling. If you had a big bag of cookies in front of you, you just constantly put your hands out. I don't know too many people who look at the serving size and look at the calories on the package, count them out, and put the box away. But this is sort of enforcing that. But the key is that 1 packet has 100 calories. 2 packets has how many? Okay, so you get my point. It's really easy to keep opening up packets. But again, if you allow yourself midday, mid-afternoon to have some snacks, you could do it guilt-free, and you can still maintain your dietary goals. Okay, fiber. What do men need? Men need about 38 grams a day, and women need about 25. When you get older, you get to eat less. Fiber is called roughage. It's a complex carbohydrate, but it doesn't have calories. Has anybody ever been on Weight Watchers before? 1 person, wow. So the Weight Watcher thing that if there's more fiber in it, you get, it has fewer points in it. And the reason for that is that fiber is non-digestible, but doesn't really have any calories to it. So it absorbs water, it fills you up, it stays in the stomach longer. So it can go a long way in helping you to meet calorie goals and not overeating. So there are 2 kinds of fiber. They're really, most foods that have fiber in them are going to have both soluble and insoluble in them. Some are a little higher than others. But the different types of fiber is what gives fiber its health-promoting attributes. So if you think about soluble fiber as being a sponge, so it absorbs water, it traps fats and sugars, cholesterol in the intestines. So those soluble fibers, if you think of it like oats, okay, that's the whole idea behind Cheerios, that's the whole idea behind Quaker Oats, that it lowers cholesterol. It also helps to moderate glucose absorption and digestion and absorption. So for people with type 2 diabetes, this is really, really helpful. Even people who don't have diabetes, who may be hyperinsulin secretors, you can, the more insulin you secrete, the more fat you store. So if you can moderate that insulin level with fiber, it goes a long way in helping you to achieve either weight or, dietary goals. And then the insoluble, you kind of think of it as a broom. It's almost like a detoxifying agent. It sweeps toxins out of the colon quickly. It promotes digestive health. It prevents constipation. For people with diverticulosis, it can prevent diverticulosis because the pressure inside the colon does not facilitate, those diverticular from forming. The relationship to cancer and fiber is really not quite there yet. We think that it may help to lower the risk of colon cancer. That's what's always been out there, breast cancer, maybe stomach cancer and prostate cancer, but the research hasn't really caught up with that idea yet. So I kind of mapped out a day, for those, Americans probably get half of the fiber they actually need. But I kind of mapped out a day starting at breakfast down to dinner. And basically, the sources of your fiber are going to be your fruits, your vegetables, and your whole grain breads and cereals. I mean, you think about a cup of shredded wheat, those little mini ones, it's maybe just a little bit bigger than this. It's not a lot, but you get about 5.5 grams of fiber from that. So it's pretty good. If you keep apples and dried fruit around, baby carrots, they're great ways of snacking as well as getting some fiber. When we talked about using your snacks to get extra nutrients that you might not otherwise, this is a great way to do it. If you eat fruit instead of drinking juice, it's a great way of getting fiber. If you make sure that you eat the peel, because you get the insoluble fiber as well as the soluble fiber there. You can add beans to soups and stews. Salads. And then when you're reading packages, make sure that you're looking at the fiber content, and when you're choosing breads, if you choose a bread that has 2 or more grams per slice, and if you choose cereals with 5 or more, you're pretty good. Okay, I challenge you, go vegetarian once a week. Do we have any vegetarians here? Okay, a couple, that's good. Are you vegan or? Do you eat milk and eggs, just no meat? Okay. Vegetarian cuisine is naturally low in saturated fats. Foods of plant origin have absolutely no cholesterol in them. They're high in fiber, and vegetarian studies do show that vegetarians tend to eat fewer calories because the grains, the fruits, the vegetables, legumes tend to be lower in calories than higher fat meats and poultry. So where do you get protein from if you're not eating meat? Quinoa, this is a grain, actually it's not even a grain, it's a seed that we featured a number of times in our cooking studio. Excuse me, you cook it just the way you cook rice. It cooks up in about the same amount of time. It's available in red, and there's like a whole bunch of different varieties, and it's really easy to find. You could just find it in your local ShopRite. But you mix that with some mixed vegetables. Look at the protein content of that. To put it into perspective, a cup has 8 grams of protein. That's 1 ounce of meat has about 7. So, you get this tiny portion of meat, for 7 grams, and you get a whole cup of, a really good tasting grain. A tofu stir fry, tofu takes on the flavor of anything that you mix it with. Okay, so you can make it Italian, you could make it Mexican, you could make it Asian style. People don't like the texture, but you can change the texture, okay? If you just like, just like pan fry it, the texture changes completely. Vegetarian chili, if you look at a cup of beans, has almost 2 ounces of meat's worth of protein in it. Lentils, the same. Lentils cook up in 40 minutes. You add that with rice, have a salad. It's a pretty quick, meal. And tempeh is also a good source. We are lucky in this area, this New York metropolitan area. We have so many specialty stores. There's Whole Foods, there's Fairway, there's the Maywood Market, Corrado's down in Clifton. So, if you want to experiment with vegetarian foods, go to the markets, buy some ingredients, or buy some of these already prepared things. Figure out what you like, what you don't like. It might, stir your appetite a little bit. Might want you to, make you actually go and get a vegetarian cookbook. That Mark Bittman's How to Cook Everything Vegetarian is a pretty awesome cookbook. You could take it out of the library and, for 30 days you could cook away. Okay. Slim down your beverages. Did Mayor Bloomberg get it right? Did you all hear that the judge struck down that law? Yes. Okay. I was really disappointed, actually, because, I don't know, wherever you stand on the whole idea, I figured if I were a purveyor, I would just say, I'd offer 2 16 ounces for the price of one, and you still get, what you're trying to sell. But I was actually, pretty impressed that somebody was willing to take a stand on this. This beverage pyramid was developed by Nestle and the USDA, and it can really give you an idea as to where you can make better choices in your beverages. The average person probably gets about 20% of their calories every day from beverages, when it really should be less than 10%. And honestly, I think it should be even less than that. I think that one fabulous cup of coffee that you have in the morning, that you put whatever it is that you love in it, enjoy that, and the rest of your beverages should be calorie-free. The average teenager drinks 2 12-ounce cans of soda a day. Have you even seen a 12-ounce can of soda anymore? How do you sell them? How are they sold? 20 ounces, all right? And with the issue of childhood obesity, we could do so much better when we feed our kids. I bet adults drink more than that. Forcing the fast food restaurants to actually list the calories in their beverages and food choices, I think, actually helped people to make better choices, and they started offering better choices, because I know it would be really difficult for me to order one of these beverages if smack on the label, on the cup, it said you are drinking 560 calories. I think that would be really, really hard for most people to do. So as you can see, each of these beverages and the calorie content. Now, in no way do I mean to insinuate that these Naked Juice bottles are in that same category, but the point is that they do have calories. Now that's, I think, a 15.9 ounce container. And what annoys me the most about these containers is that when you look at the calorie level of it and the calorie content, it says 150 calories, okay? But then if you look at the serving size, or how many servings per container, it's 2. So, you have to really dig for this information, because these companies are sneaky. Because I think it would be, again, tough to drink that whole bottle if you knew that it had a whole 300 calories. Now again, I'm not putting them in the same category because you do get plenty of vitamins and minerals from it, but it still makes a caloric contribution. Okay, I sort of really, really hate to do this on the day before St. Patrick's Day and to young people, but somebody has to be responsible, right? So the potential benefits that come, that are associated with alcohol and wine really are in the cardiovascular world. So it raises your good cholesterol, your HDLs. It can, the antioxidants in it, the resveratrol, which is found in the grape skin, is cardioprotective. And there may also be a risk of, reduced risk of clot formation, and that's, important cardiovascular disease. But the relationship between alcohol and cardiovascular disease is pretty complex. So how wine, there still needs to be more research on this. But even so, the American Heart Association does not recommend that you drink alcohol to achieve those health effects, okay? Because there's plenty of other, things that you can do to do that. But what they do recommend is that if you do drink, that you drink in moderation. And they came out with, a definition of moderation. So for women, it's 1 drink a day. For men, it's 2 drinks a day. And then again, that's a 12-ounce bottle of beer is 1, drink, a 1.5 ounce of hard liquor, 5 ounces of wine, and that's not 16 ounces of any of those things in a red cup. All right? So, but in the cancer world, this is like hot off the press. The American Journal of Public Health actually just published last month, and I don't know if you've seen the press on it, a study. And what they wanted to do was to look to ascertain the number of cancer deaths or years of potential life lost that might be attributed to alcohol consumption. So what they found was that alcohol consumption resulted in an estimated 3.5% of all cancer deaths. So reducing alcohol consumption is really an important and kind of underemphasized cancer prevention strategy. The majority of alcohol-attributed deaths in women came from breast cancer. And again, you think about like all the other risk factors that we talked about, BMI, related to breast cancer. You talk about exercise or lack thereof related to breast cancer. You talk about alcohol related to breast cancer. There's so many factors there that, we can have an impact on ourselves to improve our health. So I'm just putting it out there, all right? Obviously less is a lot better than more. Okay, that's the adult in me, I'm done. All right, sugar, the not so sweet side. What has sugar been linked to? Obesity, elevated triglycerides, hypertension, elevated bad cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, tooth decay. There may even be a link to depression. The cancer story is a little more fuzzy. Sugar doesn't cause cancer per se, but due to the caloric content of it, it may have an impact in terms of obesity, as well certainly of type 2 diabetes, because diabetics and people in the obese BMI category do have higher rates of developing cancer than the non. Where do we get sugar from? 36% is going to come from those soft drinks. 19% is from your cakes, cookies, pies, pastries, donuts, candy. 6% comes from ice cream, sweetened yogurts, 4% from sugar-sweetened cereals. I was actually surprised that was as low as it was. I can't tell you how many diet histories I do on 65-year-olds that really love Fruit Loops. Now this is added sugar we're talking about here. And this is another thing about label reading that I find a little bit funny, because sugar in an ingredient list is not exactly a wonderful word. It's not a great marketing tool. So they hide the name. Naturally containing natural sugars would be like the sugar in fruit. Okay, that's fructose. Milk contains sugar, and that's lactose. But so if you're looking at labels, you kind of have to, speak a different language. So look for sugar with the words OS, O-S-E. So that would be sucrose or maltose. Other names for sugar would be high fructose corn syrup or molasses, cane sugar or cane syrup, corn sweetener, raw sugar, maybe raw, but it's still sugar, syrup, honey, and fruit juice concentrates. I mean, there's tons of other names out there, but, just beware. How much should you have? Okay, it's a little sobering too. Men, American Heart Association actually came up with a recommendation. For men, it should be about 150 calories a day. To equate that, that's about 38 grams. Isn't that interesting how it's the same numbers for fiber? Either way. And that's about 9 teaspoons worth of actual sugar. And for women, it should be 100 calories, that's 25 grams, or about 6 teaspoons of sugar. How do you cut back? I mean, those beverages are a great way to do it. You can put cinnamon, ginger in oatmeal. It takes on a sweet taste, but doesn't add any sugar to it. You can add dry fruit, fresh fruit to your cereals as well. One thing that I started doing was I would take a unsweetened cereal and I would take like just a little bit of those Honey Nut Cheerios and sprinkle it on top. So it was just enough to give it, you know, a little bit of flavor, but not enough to, you know, like a whole bowl. You can try some of the non-nutritive or artificial sweeteners. Again, I'm not pressing them because too much of them is not so great for you either, but it can go a long way in satisfying that sweet tooth for people who just need that little bit you know, of sweet taste. I actually got myself off of the sugar in my coffee in the morning with stevia. It was the only one that I could like manage to, you know, handle the taste of. Okay, so how do you want to get your sugar? We go back to that same bottle. That's 300 calories or 60 grams of sugar worth. And you think about how easy it is to drink that one bottle of naked juice, and that's about 5 servings of fruit. So it would take you a lot longer, and there would be, you know, a lot more action in that fruit than in that juice. Okay, so let's go back to those beverage containers. Where do those calories come from? The majority of them come from sugar. So that's a good place. If you think about, you know, the 38 grams for men and the 25 grams for women, boy, you could blow several days on one of those drinks. You know, they taste good, but they taste good for a reason. So, and again, I'm not including, just to give you an idea, the calories in the naked juice, the 300 calories, that's about 60 grams of sugar. But that's, you're lucky, because that one you don't have to count because that's the natural sugar. It's just the added sugar where the limit comes in. Okay, so when you get to the grocery store, sometimes do you feel like you're a little bit lost in trying to put it all together? That's kind of how I think about, you know, when I looked at this, you know, if you had to read those 300 some odd references to figure out what to eat. Well, let's make it a little bit simpler. It's not impossible, but it's a little more difficult to eat healthfully on a consistent basis if you don't cook the meal yourself. So, you know, there's just so many opportunities out there to make bad choices. There are many opportunities, especially now, to make good choices, but somehow the bad choices always taste so much better. And unfortunately, really, those bad choices tend to be the cheaper options also. So that's another thing. The food channels have spurred a whole new group of hobby cooks, and I think that's just been so fabulous for you know, health purposes. But let's look at, you know, when you visit the grocery store, what kind of things can you keep in your pantry? Because if you stock your pantry with healthy staples, you will not have a choice. You will have to produce a healthy meal. So if we look at our grains, some whole wheat pasta. I am half Italian, and I'm sorry, I cannot eat whole wheat pasta with red sauce on it. It just doesn't work for me. But I can do it in an Asian style. So if I'm doing a stir fry and I want to use some whole grain capellini, say, you know, as my noodle, I can do it that way. Brown rice is a good alternative. Has anybody seen the press on arsenic in rice? You know, it's like such a, you know, staple in how many, you know, countries, you know. But the recommendations haven't really come out yet on what to do with arsenic in the rice, but the food industry has kind of gotten around it. So if you think about, you know, when you cook rice, to cook rice very similarly to the way you would cook pasta in a big pot with water, it leaches much of the arsenic out. And brown rice was a little bit higher in arsenic. But again, that's the whole point of eating a variety of grains. You don't just eat rice. You eat the quinoa, you eat bulgur, you eat wheat berries. You know, it's about a variety. Dairy, if you keep plain, non-fat Greek yogurt in the house, I think this Chobani is like the greatest thing that was ever invented. It's a breakfast smoothie, it's sour cream, sort of, on a baked potato. It has that same taste. This stuff is really, really thick, and a little goes a long way. Low-fat milk or soy milk, low-fat cheeses, vegetables. Canned tomatoes are probably, the most versatile thing that you could keep in your pantry. You could do Mediterranean, you could do Italian. There's so many ways that you could use canned tomatoes. And frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables are not like the peas and carrots from, like when our parents were growing up. There's gorgeous frozen vegetables out there now with lots of, different variety. And when these vegetables are picked at their peak of ripeness, they are almost indistinguishable nutritionally from fresh, especially if those fresh vegetables have already rotted in the crisper section of your refrigerator. So I can't tell you how much my compost pile has been fed by uneaten fresh fruits and vegetables. So you keep some frozen ones there, then you always have easy vegetables available to you. Okay, so fruits, keeping dried fruits, frozen fruits. Again, frozen fruit can be sprinkled into oatmeal, can be sprinkled into cereal, can become that breakfast smoothie. They're good to just eat, frozen out of the bag. It's really kind of a fun treat. Oils, keeping the monounsaturated. All oils have calories, but there are better oils for you. So the olive oil and the canola oil. And then getting down to your protein foods, canned beans. If you have a can of beans, a can of tomatoes, and some whole wheat pasta, you have a vegetarian meal. All you have to do is add the seasonings that you like to it. Dried lentils, again, they cook up in 40 minutes. The rice cooks up in 20 minutes. That's a 40-minute meal right there. Add some Indian curry spices to it, have a salad, a vegetarian meal right there. I think frozen, uncooked shrimp is like a working mother's dream come true. I have put a dinner on the table in 20 minutes. You put them in some water, they defrost in minutes. You throw in some vegetables, boil up the rice, and you have a stir fry. Canned tuna, salmon in water, anchovies. You can add them to salads, you can toss them with pasta, very Mediterranean. Nuts and nut butters. And you want to be careful. You don't want to shop hungry. That's the kiss of death for a healthy diet. If you leave from work or if you leave from school, you want to make sure that keep a piece of fruit in the car. Keep, one of these 100-calorie pack of nuts. Just something that you can munch on to kind of, hold off that hunger. Because trust me, you buy so much more when you're hungry than when you're not. If you can try and stick to a list, try and plan out a couple of meals in advance. Then you won't be sitting there when you're tired and getting home from work and looking in the refrigerator and trying to figure out what am I going to have for dinner. And my final words of advice is that if you can avoid purchasing junk foods for the 30 or 40 minutes that you spend in the grocery store every week, you don't have to avoid them 24/7 once you get them in your house. So just remember, you are what you eat. Does this guy look like Dr. Oz a little bit? I think so. Okay, well, thank you. So I don't think I totally went over my time. Are there any questions? Yeah.
The sugars that you find in like an orange juice, do you count that towards your?
No, you don't have to, because unless it's an added sugar, but like like a fruit drink, no. It's that's fructose and that's a natural sugar. Yeah, but it doesn't have to go, into that category of the limits. Yeah.
Could you use agave nectar as well, like a sweetener?
Yes. Agave is interesting. Again, we've used it in the cooking studio a lot. The nice thing about agave is, everybody familiar with it? Kind of looks like a light-colored maple syrup, or kind of looks like honey, actually. The agave is about 25% sweeter than regular sugar, so you use less of it. The calorie, like teaspoon for teaspoon is basically the same, but how would you describe the flavor of it? Like honeyish?
Yeah, it's really sweet. Sometimes I'll put it in tea kind of boost up the bland flavor?
Yeah, yeah. And it's good because, again, it's 25% sweeter, so you need less of it. So if you're using less of it, even though it's, equal in calories, you're still using less. It also has a better glycemic index, so it doesn't raise the blood sugar as high as, that same amount of actual table sugar.
Thank you.
Plus some of the artificial sweeteners were linked with cancer, like
Yeah.
aspartame and
Yeah, yeah.
is that the case, or is that debunked?
Pardon?
Is that still the case, or is that?
Well, honestly, no. I mean, the studies are very, very weak on that. But again, I think in some ways, it's like trying to, sometimes you're picking your poison. If you absolutely have to have something, a beverage, that's sweet, you might be better off having one beverage with the aspartame if, you're fighting the sugar. So it was particularly linked with bladder cancer, but those studies really are not that strong. And the volume, again, that you would need to take is to even achieve what they showed in the studies is really not reasonable for an adult human.
Does that study about alcohol, is that recommending that you shouldn't drink any alcohol?
Well, the recommendation said that there really is, or the study said that there really is no safe threshold. So again, you have to realize it's one study, and it's it's weighing the risks. Particularly I think if you look at the high risk groups for women, the cancer deaths came mostly with breast cancer. So if you're looking at breast cancer, if you have breast cancer, it might not be the best thing for you. I mean, if you want to toast, at a wedding, that kind of thing is, certainly okay. But again, the recommendation is less rather than more. Yes.
When you talk about the fruits and vegetables and the beans and everything, you didn't mention organic versus conventional.
Good question.
If you had any.
Yes. The bottom line is that organic nutritionally are no different or they're not more nutritious than non-organic vegetables. The pesticide situation is different. So when you're feeding children, you might want to be careful about it. But the links to cancer and whether or not people who eat organic have lower rates of cancer than people who don't, those studies aren't out there. I mean, it seems to make sense, but we can't back it up, that statement up with, but one thing you might want to think about, who was it? It was the Environmental Working Group, and you could just Google this. This is the nation's leading environmental health research and advocacy organization. They put out a list called the Dirty Dozen. And so if you're going to spend your money on organic fruits and vegetables, you might want to do it with the ones that they consider the dirtiest or the most contaminated. And I'll just run through the 12 of them. So it's peaches, apples, sweet bell peppers, celery, nectarines, strawberries, cherries, pears, grapes, the imported kind, not the California ones, spinach, lettuce, and potatoes. Okay? The least contaminated ones were onions, avocado, corn, pineapple, mango, bananas, cabbage, broccoli, papaya, asparagus. But go online and for the Environmental Working Group, and you can get that list pretty easily.
This may be a naive question, but in that land of organic and pesticides being the issue there, there are all these washes. You can wash your vegetables and your fruit. Does that limit, or is it within the food?
No, I mean, honestly, those washes and things, if you just even washed in vinegar, they're, those things are expensive and they really don't do any better a job than anything else. You are washing it off. No, it's really basically on the surface. There may be some that, is absorbed into the inside of, the fruit. But it's basically on the outside. So if you scrub good, with a soft scrub brush, soak, soak, drain, soak your vegetables, you're getting most of it off. But, organic vegetables and fruits are expensive. You can get them everywhere now. It's not like relegated to, the corner of, some Asian market. You really can find them everywhere. But, maybe you can put your money where you think it's most worth it. Yes?
Can you just comment on like sports drinks and?
Yeah.
Because my husband's highly addicted to Gatorade.
Yeah. Well, the sports.
I've heard, horror stories.
Yeah, they're not horror stories. If you are a real sweating kind of athlete, okay, then basically what you're drinking is soda without fizz. I think you're drinking juice with salt poured in it. I don't know how anybody can drink it, to be honest with you. But, the value in it, there's a lot of calories in it. And the ones that don't have the calories have the non-nutritive sweeteners in it because people still want the taste. So I don't really see much value in it unless you are electrolyte, depleted. If, for some of our chemo patients, we definitely, recommend to replace those electrolytes. No, so I would say they're not really necessary. They're full of sugar. Okay. All right, I'm getting the 10-minute mark. I'll be happy to stand around, stay here if anybody has any other questions, but I thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. That was really informative and some good takeaway home. Some good takeaway home messages there, so thank you. I want to remind everyone to please fill out your evaluations before you leave. We're very interested in knowing what you liked, what you didn't like, and maybe what you want to hear for the future. Like I said, this is our first workshop here in New Jersey, and I'm hoping that everyone is getting something out of it today.